that she's out of her depth. I remember that first budget, and it was all about how she was the first female chancellor. But being the first female whatever is not an achievement if you're doing a bad job. And it's the people that you're working for that should give a verdict on whether you've achieved something or not. The mistakes that she made in that budget are what she's trying to fix now with the emergency budget that we're getting tomorrow. This is not something that's reacting to world events. She made errors, problems have been caused, and now she's going to try and fix them.
Banking crisis and budget battles. Starmer's growing headache. Good morning, political enthusiasts, and welcome back to UK Connors, where we dissect the power plays that shape our nation. If you're not already part of our growing community of political insiders, hit that subscribe button now because today's revelations will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about Labour's economic strategy. The corridors of Westminster are buzzing with tension, and frankly, it's about bloody time someone called out what's really happening behind those closed doors. Today, we're diving deep into a story that's sending shockwaves through both Downing Street and the City of London, and trust me, by the end of this analysis, you'll understand exactly why Keir Starmer's having sleepless nights. Picture this. You're the Prime Minister, basking in the afterglow of a landslide victory, promising growth, prosperity, and a new dawn for Britain. Then suddenly, one of the most powerful figures in British banking delivers a warning so stark, so uncompromising, that it threatens to unravel your entire economic narrative. This isn't political theater, folks. This is real-world economics colliding with political ambition, and the fallout could reshape how we think about Labour's competence in managing our economy. C.S. Venkatakrishnan, the formidable head of Barclays, has just delivered what can only be described as a financial ultimatum to Rachel Reeves and her Treasury team. His words weren't wrapped in diplomatic niceties or corporate speak. No, this was as direct as it gets in the genteel world of high finance. The tax on UK banks is higher than on banks anywhere else. So how much further are you going to squeeze this? Let that sink in for a moment. The head of one of Britain's most influential financial institutions isn't making polite suggestions. He's drawing a line in the sand. But here's where it gets absolutely fascinating. And if you're enjoying this deep dive into the machinations of power, make sure you're subscribed because we're just getting started. Venkatakrishnan's intervention comes at perhaps the most critical juncture in Labour's early governance. With Rachel Reeves preparing to deliver her autumn budget on October 30th, a budget that everyone knows will be packed with tax rises to plug what some are calling a £22 billion black hole in public finances, the banking sector is essentially saying, not so fast. The timing couldn't be more politically toxic for Starmer's government. Here we have Labour, supposedly the party of working people, being lectured by a banking executive about fiscal responsibility. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a knife. Venkatakrishnan isn't just concerned about bank taxes. Oh no, his critique goes much deeper, striking at the very heart of Labour's approach to public sector pay and economic management. In what can only be described as breathtaking audacity, the Barclays chief has essentially told the government to rein in public sector pay rises. Wage inflation is a problem right across the UK economy, he declared, and we need to find a way to curb wage inflation. The man running an institution where executive bonuses run into millions is telling the government that teachers, nurses, and civil servants are getting too much money. The political optics here are absolutely devastating for Labour. Think about the position this puts Starmer in. His party spent years in opposition criticizing conservative austerity, promising to properly fund public services and give workers a fair deal. Now, barely months into power, he's being advised by a banking executive to squeeze the very people who voted him into office. It's a masterclass in how economic realities can quickly overwhelm political promises. But here's what makes the story even more compelling. And do subscribe if you want more of this insider analysis. The pressure from Barclays isn't happening in isolation. This is part of a broader pattern of business leaders pushing back against Labour's tax plans. The financial services sector, which contributes over £170 billion to the UK economy annually, is essentially threatening to withdraw its support for Britain as a global financial centre. Venkatakrishnan warning about London's status as a financial hub carries serious weight. London is a fantastic global financial centre, and taxing the industry more isn't going to drive growth, he stated with the confidence of someone who knows exactly how mobile international capital can be. This isn't an empty threat. We've seen what happens when financial institutions lose confidence in government policy. Remember the exodus after previous tax raids on the sector. The political chess game here is absolutely riveting. Labor needs revenue to fund its spending commitments, but it's constrained by election promises not to raise income tax, national insurance, or VAT on ordinary working people. This leaves businesses, particularly profitable sectors like banking, as obvious targets. But those sectors aren't sitting quietly. They are fighting back with the one weapon they have: the threat of reduced investment and economic consequences. What's particularly striking is how this confrontation exposes a fundamental tension in Labor's economic approach. They want to be seen as pro-business while also increasing public spending significantly. They promise growth while threatening to impose higher taxes on the very sectors that drive economic expansion. It's a circle that simply cannot be squared without someone getting hurt. The Institute for Public Policy Research has suggested that a windfall tax on banks could raise up to £8 billion annually for public services. £8 billion. That's serious money, enough to fund significant improvements in healthcare, education, or infrastructure. But Venkatakrishnan's response essentially amounts to, try it, and see what happens to London's financial sector. This standoff is being played out against a backdrop of economic uncertainty that should concern every viewer of this channel. The Office for National Statistics revealed on Friday that the UK economy showed zero growth in July, a stagnation that undermines Labour's central promise of delivering economic expansion. How do you square promising growth while simultaneously antagonizing the sectors that drive it? Here's where the political calculation becomes truly treacherous for Starmer and Reeves. Public opinion polling consistently shows that voters want better public services and are generally supportive of higher taxes on banks and big businesses. The politics of taxing banks is actually quite popular. Most ordinary voters have little sympathy for financial institutions still associated with the 2008 crisis and subsequent taxpayer bailouts. But popularity in polling doesn't translate into economic success if those policies ultimately harm growth and tax revenues. This is a classic trap that's caught many left-wing governments. Policies that sound good in opposition often prove counterproductive in power when economic realities bite. The rail strikes this week, where IMT union members rejected a 3.4% pay offer, perfectly illustrate Labour's dilemma. The party that positioned itself as a champion of working people now finds itself caught between union demands for substantial pay rises and business warnings about wage inflation. Every decision they make alienates someone crucial to their political coalition. What makes Venkatakrishnan's intervention so politically damaging is its timing and tone. This isn't a private conversation leaked to the press. This is a public declaration of war against Labour's fiscal strategy, delivered through the Financial Times for maximum impact. The message is clear. The banking sector isn't just concerned about policy details. They are questioning the entire competence of Labour's economic approach. If you're finding this analysis valuable, and I suspect you are given the complexity of these economic and political dynamics, make sure you're subscribed to UK Connors because this story is far from over. The real test will come with Reeves' budget announcement, where we'll see whether Labour blinks first or doubles down on confrontation with the financial sector. The broader implications extend far beyond bank taxes or public sector pay. This confrontation is really about who governs Britain, elected politicians accountable to voters, or economic elites who can threaten to withdraw investment if policies don't suit them. It's a fundamental question of democratic accountability versus economic pragmatism. Starmer's response to this pressure will define his entire approach to economic policy. Does he stand firm on progressive taxation, risking economic consequences but maintaining political credibility with his base? Or does he moderate his approach, potentially betraying election promises but avoiding a damaging confrontation with business? The international context makes this decision even more complex. With Brexit still creating uncertainty, global economic headwinds, and intense competition from other financial centers, Britain can ill afford policies that drive away international investment. Yet the public services crisis demands significant additional funding that has to come from somewhere. What's particularly fascinating from a political strategy perspective is how Venkatakrishnan has framed his critique. By focusing on wage inflation and public sector pay, he's not just defending banking interests, he's positioning himself as concerned about broader economic stability. It's a masterful piece of political communications that makes resistance to his warning seem economically irresponsible. The pressure on Rachel Reeves is now immense. She faces the unenviable task of balancing public expectations for improved services, business demands for competitive taxation, union pressure for pay rises, and Treasury requirements for fiscal sustainability. It's a quadruple bind that would challenge even the most experienced chancellor. Labour's entire political brand rests on their claim to be more economically competent than the Conservatives who presided over market chaos and economic instability. But if their policies trigger business flight or economic stagnation, that narrative crumbles rapidly. Political credibility, once lost, is extraordinarily difficult to recover. The coming weeks will reveal whether this government has learned the lessons of previous Labour administrations that found themselves caught between political promises and economic realities. The warning from Barclays isn't just about bank taxes. It's a broader signal about business confidence in Labour's approach to economic management. As we watch this drama unfold, remember that these aren't abstract policy debates. They are decisions that will affect mortgage rates, employment levels, public service quality, and Britain's international competitiveness. The stakes couldn't be higher, and the political consequences will reverberate far beyond Westminster. This is exactly the kind of high-stake political analysis you'll find regularly on UK Connors. We don't just report the news. We decode the power dynamics, expose the strategic calculations, and explain what it all means for you. If you want to stay ahead of the political curve and understand the forces really shaping our country, subscribe now and ensure you never miss our insights into corridors of power. The banking sector's ultimatum to Starmer represents a defining moment for this government, one that will determine whether Labour can successfully navigate the treacherous waters between political promise and economic reality.